He was heartbroken when she left him at the altar. Years later, he's her new boss. Now the tables have turned, and their past is about to catch up with them. Subscribe my channel for more videos. Jason had spent months planning the perfect day. Every detail had been meticulously crafted, from the pristine white roses decorating the church to the elegant reception hall where he envisioned their first dance as husband and wife. He could almost feel the weight of her hand in his, her soft smile as she said, "I do." He had been dreaming of this day for years, and today it was all supposed to come true. The air was thick with anticipation. Guests filled the pews, eagerly awaiting the arrival of the bride. Jason stood at the altar, his heart racing. He caught sight of his best man, Mark, who gave him a reassuring nod. Everything was going according to plan, until it wasn't. The music began, and the doors opened. Jason's breath caught in his throat, but it wasn't because of how beautiful she looked walking down the aisle. No, it was because she wasn't there. For a long, excruciating moment, he stood frozen, confused, heartbroken. The guests whispered nervously, and Jason turned to Mark for an explanation. Mark's face was pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. No one knew where she was. After what felt like an eternity, the wedding planner rushed to the front, her face grim. "Jason, I'm sorry, but Emily isn't coming." Jason's knees almost gave way. The woman he was supposed to marry, the woman he had loved with every ounce of his being, had left him standing there, alone in front of everyone. It didn't make sense. Why would she do this? As the days passed, Jason received no explanation from Emily, no apology, just silence. He tried calling, texting, even reaching out through friends. But it was as if she had vanished from his life entirely. Her absence tore through him like a deep wound. How could someone who had promised to spend forever with him walk away without a word? Months turned into years, but the pain lingered. Jason eventually focused on his career, throwing himself into his work. He built a successful consulting firm, but there was always something missing, a sense of betrayal, a broken heart that refused to heal. Little did he know, fate was about to throw them together again. Only this time, in a way that would change everything. 3 years had passed since Emily walked out on Jason. In that time, he had built a life for himself, a new life, one that was full of challenges, victories, and, most importantly, independence. But despite his success, there was still a part of him that remained broken, a part of him that couldn't quite let go of the woman who had once promised him everything. It was a crisp Monday morning when Jason received the email that would change everything. The subject line simply read, "Interview request, Senior Marketing Manager position." He opened the message and saw that it was from a company he had recently partnered with for a major project, an up-and-coming tech firm that was rapidly gaining a reputation in the industry. The position was everything Jason had been looking for, and he knew it would be the next step in his career. The email mentioned that the final round of interviews would be held in person, and Jason quickly scheduled a time to meet with the company's CEO, a woman named Emily Carter. Jason froze. It took a moment for the name to click, but when it did, a chill ran down his spine. Emily Carter? Could it really be the same Emily? His mind raced as he pictured her face, the last image he had of her, the woman who had left him at the altar. Doubt crept into his mind. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe there were dozens of women named Emily Carter. But as soon as he saw her name again, the years of heartache came flooding back. He couldn't help but feel the sharp sting of betrayal all over again. What was she doing here? He could barely focus on the rest of the email, but he made sure to reply promptly, confirming the interview time. He tried to push the thoughts of Emily to the back of his mind. This was about business. It had to be. The day of the interview arrived, and Jason walked into the sleek, modern office building, trying to keep his composure. He was used to high-stakes meetings, but this one felt different. His hands were clammy, and his heart beat a little faster than usual. As he approached the receptionist, he asked for the CEO, Emily Carter. "Please have a seat, Mr. Walker," the receptionist said with a smile. "Miss Carter will be with you shortly." Jason sat, trying to steady his nerves. His mind raced with questions. What happened to her? Why hadn't she explained? Why did she leave that day without a word? He still couldn't understand how someone could simply vanish, but the years had taught him to be stronger, to hold on to his pride and dignity. The door opened, and his breath caught in his throat. Standing there, framed in the doorway, was the last person he ever expected to see again. Emily. She looked almost the same, except for a few subtle changes. Her hair was a little shorter, and there was a certain confidence in her posture that he didn't remember from their past. But the moment their eyes met, all the old emotions came rushing back. The anger, the confusion, the heartbreak, all of it hit him like a freight train. "Jason," Emily said, her voice soft but steady. "I see you haven't forgotten me." Jason stood frozen for a moment, his mind a blur. He had spent so long trying to forget her, and now here she was, standing right in front of him. The woman who had shattered his heart was now the woman who could shape his career. "Emily," he said, his voice cold, "you're the CEO of this company?" She nodded, a flicker of remorse crossing her face. "I know this is unexpected, but I'm here because we need someone like you, Jason. You're the best at what you do. And I wanted you to know that I never forgot you. I never meant to hurt you." Jason's stomach twisted. Never meant to hurt me? He wanted to shout, to demand answers. But a part of him, the part that had spent years buried beneath layers of pride and pain, wanted to know what had happened. Why had she left? "Why?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why did you leave me? We were supposed to build a life together, Emily. What happened?" Her face softened, and for the first time in years, Jason saw a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. "I made a mistake, Jason. I was scared, and I ran. I ran from the only thing I ever truly wanted." For a long moment, there was silence between them. Jason could feel the weight of the years between them, the unresolved tension, the lingering hurt. But something inside him snapped. No. He wasn't going to let her control this moment. Not anymore. "Why now, Emily? Why after all this time?" Jason's voice was firm, his eyes unwavering. She took a deep breath. "Because I need you, Jason. Not just for this job, but for what we once had. And I know I can't undo the past, but I'm asking you to consider the future, to give me a chance to make things right." The silence that followed Emily's confession felt heavy, like a thick fog settling between them. Jason couldn't help but feel a rush of emotions: anger, confusion, hope, and the faintest trace of love. He had spent so many years rebuilding himself, moving past the girl who had left him without a word, without a reason. Now she was standing in front of him, asking for forgiveness, asking for another chance. Jason took a deep breath and slowly let it out, his mind whirling with all the questions he'd never asked her, the ones he had buried deep inside to protect himself from the pain. But now, in this moment, with her standing here, he had to know the truth. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away without confronting it once and for all. "Emily," he said, his voice steady, but filled with an intensity that surprised even him, "I've spent years trying to understand why you left. I've moved on, but a part of me has always wondered. Why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you give me the chance to fight for us?" Emily's eyes welled up with tears, and for the first time, Jason saw the vulnerability in her that had been hidden beneath her confident exterior. She had always been the strong one, the one who had everything under control, but now she was trembling, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was scared, Jason. I was terrified. I was young, and I didn't think I was ready for the kind of commitment we had. And when I saw how perfect everything was, how perfect we were, I panicked. I didn't know how to handle it. So I ran. I thought it would be easier for both of us, but I was wrong. I left you, and I destroyed us." Jason stood there, listening to her words, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of clarity. He had spent years holding on to his anger and resentment, but now, in this moment, he realized that holding on to that pain wasn't going to bring him peace. The woman in front of him wasn't the same person who had walked away years ago. She had grown. She had learned. And maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for them to heal, if not as lovers, then at least as people who could move on. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Jason said softly, his voice filled with a mixture of honesty and sadness. "You hurt me more than I thought anyone could. But I also know that holding on to this bitterness isn't going to get me anywhere. Maybe we can start over. Not as what we were, but as who we've become." Emily's eyes searched his face, looking for a sign that he meant it. After a long pause, she nodded, her voice steady once more. "I understand, Jason. I'm not asking for everything right away. I'm asking for a chance for the future. For us to be in each other's lives again, no matter how that looks. I won't push you, but I hope you'll consider it." Jason looked at her, the woman who had shattered his world and now stood before him, offering an uncertain but sincere path forward. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This was more than just an opportunity for reconciliation. It was a chance to let go of the past, to heal, and to decide who he wanted to be in the next chapter of his life. The interview continued, but it felt like time had slowed down. Jason's mind was no longer on the position or the company. It was on the conversation he'd just had with Emily. By the end of their meeting, they both stood, exchanging polite handshakes and words, but something had changed. The air between them was different, charged with a sense of possibility and, for Jason, a deep understanding that life wasn't as simple as leaving the past behind. As Jason walked out of the office building that day, he wasn't sure what would happen next. Would they rebuild their relationship? Would they become friends? Would he ever truly forgive her? Only time would tell. But one thing was clear. Whatever path he chose, he had reclaimed his power. The boy who had been abandoned at the altar had transformed into a man who knew how to heal, how to grow, and how to move forward. And maybe, just maybe, the future would be kind to him. The end.